Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the National E-Learning Center podcast series about digital credentials to promote trusted online learning for all. Today, credentials play a critical role in recognizing the competencies earned by the learners, especially with the phenomenal growth of online learning for upskilling and reskilling. It is essential for us to understand the role of digital credentials in the life learning process and ecosystem. So, in this special podcast series, we will explore aspects of credentials from innovation, standards, and policymaking, and their impact on bridging between the labor market demand and supply from the perspective of academia and industry. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by a special guest, David Leeser, Senior Executive of Strategic Growth Initiative for IBM, founder of the IBM Digital Program, and founder of Digital Badge Academy. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest to the podcast. Welcome, Mr. Leeser. May you tell our listeners more about yourself?
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me. My background has always been in skills development in the IT world. And I've worked for a number of different organizations around those lines. At IBM, I've had the good fortune to be able to develop several innovations at IBM. I started by developing several training programs at IBM. And then I moved on to developing the first online digital program that was embedded into our product. So we literally embedded thousands of video clips of training right into our products in about 18 different languages. I also developed at IBM what was called the Smarter Workforce category. I was the marketing lead for the Smarter Workforce category. And then I also developed the IBM Digital Badge program, really transforming IBM's view of how digital credentials could be used in the workplace. I also developed the IBM New Collar certificate program, which was a way to provide an alternative for a college degree. And then most recently, I'm the founder of the the Digital Badge Academy. I'm also a fellow at Northeastern University, and I've worked with higher education to merge badges and digital credentials with institutions.
Very enthusiastic to hear more about your experience. So, Mr. Leeser, how do you see the effectiveness of online learning in the workplace?
Well, I think online learning is the future for learning. And I think you can see that starting to show up in most organizations, which are starting to put their budgets into online learning. But I think that there are some tremendous benefits from online learning. I think one of the biggest ones is the flexibility and the ability to have self-paced learning. So when you think about it, people are so time pressed right now. It's very difficult to spend 2 or 3 days or even a week doing training like we used to even 10 years ago. And so I think the fact that we now can have a way for students to learn at their own pace, which means they can take as much time as they need to understand a topic, is extremely important. And I think that's particularly useful for students who may need more time to understand a topic, or they want to revisit a topic multiple times. And I'm one of those types of learners that likes to go back and review things over and over. I think that's a big one. I think another big one for me is the access to expertise. And when you think about it, when we were with traditional classroom training, if you didn't have a good instructor, you really didn't get a good education. And now we can bring good instructors from all over the globe. So we can bring instructors from Saudi Arabia to the United States, or from the United States to Saudi Arabia, online or through self-paced learning. And so now people from all over the world can have the benefit of having the best experts, no matter where they happen to live, come literally right into their homes or into their offices to teach them. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits, is you really never get a bad instructor day with online learning. I think another one that's really very important is that it's personalized. And so oftentimes we have gone through training that we may already know. Half of it we've already learned, and it's kind of remedial for us. But with online learning, we can create personalized learning, and we can use other tools like adaptive learning and adaptive testing to test people out of the subjects they may already know. That saves an enormous amount of time, and it really spikes people's curiosity because they're now focused on only the things that they really need to learn. So I think that's another big one. One last one too, I think that I would add to that is that it's collaborative. That now with online learning and with online communities, we can create collaboration spaces so people can continue to learn beyond the classroom. And I think that's a tremendous benefit.
So, to summarize your points, the benefits of online learning is flexibility, accessibility, expert mobility, collaboration, and personalization. To pursue this further, Mr. Leeser, you mentioned that you are the founder of Digital Badge Program. What were the driving factors to this foundation?
Yeah. So that's a very good segue, because the Digital Badge Program started with online learning. We had a single use case at IBM, and it's a use case that a lot of other organizations have. How do we attract more talent to our organization, and how do we build the skills for that talent? We had developed an online university, which is now called CognitiveClass.ai. And CognitiveClass.ai is a free online university. Anybody in the world can take these courses for free and develop really deep skills on big data and a number of IT subjects. So it's a really tremendous benefit. And we thought that was a good idea for us as a company to be able to provide those skills for a number of reasons. One was we wanted to make sure that we had enough skills in the market to support our products. And two, we want to accelerate the growth of these products in our client accounts. So they need this type of, these skills. Well, we developed this great program called Cognitive Class, and we had a lot of people register, but we didn't have a lot of people sticking around and taking the courses or completing the courses. And they certainly didn't take the end of course exam at the end. And so it was a big problem with us. The retention problem was very significant. We thought maybe if we added something to the program to provide an incentive, we could get people to stay and retain that talent and get them to complete the courses. We looked at a number of different options, and we settled on digital badges. So in the beginning of 2015, so now we're going back, 8 years now, we decided to launch the IBM Digital Badge Program. We started developing the concept for it in 2014. And it was actually a very small, very focused project. I was brought in to develop the program, and I was given one single person to help develop that program, one person to help, create the operations for the program. We developed the entire IBM Digital Badge Program in probably about 3 months, maybe even less than that. So it was very, very quick because we had a very small team to do it. And we launched it with Cognitive Class. We decided to add digital badges to these courses on Cognitive Class. So by the spring of 2015, we started looking at the early, we started looking at metrics. And this was very important for us. We looked at the metrics of how many people were coming up to Cognitive Class before we added these badges. And it was, like I said, a lot of people were coming up, but they weren't staying around. We introduced the digital badges, I think, in May of 2015. And then in about a month, we started looking at the difference between before and after. And nothing else had been introduced to Cognitive Class. There was no, driving factor. There was no marketing. There was nothing happened except the badges. It's the only single variable. Well, we found that we increased the number of people taking those courses by more than 125%. And we found that the number of people completing the courses was more than 200%. And then we found that the number of people taking the exam at the end, and of course it was a small number at this point. I mean, there were, maybe 1,000 people taking the exam at the end. But by the end of this, we found that there were about 9,000 people. So it was like almost a 700% increase in people taking the exam.
Wow.
We asked people why they did it, and they said it was because of the badges. And so what came out of that, though, we continued to watch this. And we found by the end of that year that the average person had come back and gained 3 badges each. So they were coming back and they were earning more badges. And by the way, it became more difficult. That badge number 2 is a little harder to get. Badge number 3 is even harder. So they get progressively, more complicated training and more sophisticated training as you go through it. So it not only did it get people to stay around and take these exams and earn these credentials, but then they came back and they got more. That then launched the digital badge program that we had at IBM. Going forward, We went into full production with the program, and now we have issued, millions of badges at IBM.
Fantastic. Mr. Leisure, you are mentioning digital badge. What exactly do you mean by the digital badges exactly?
So what a digital badge is, it's very simply a representation of an achievement or an activity. It's really nothing more than that. And so when you think about it, what we've done is we've created a way for people to capture their capabilities or their interests or their achievements in a digital way and express that in digital media, whether it be through an email or through a digital resume or in social media or in an electronic system like a learning management system or an applicant tracking system. It's just simply a container that provides information about a qualification or achievement that somebody has earned. The digital badges the digital badge standard allows you to put the name of the activity into it, a description of what that activity is, skills tags, the metadata of skills tags that are inside it, recommended next steps, and all of this information is very simply, when you create an activity like, say, an online course, you simply create a spreadsheet with all that information. That information then can be embedded into this digital emblem, and then that emblem can be shared in all those different places. That's all it is.
So the digital badge can contain micro-credentials or more or less. What do you think about that?
Well, it's a really good question because a digital badge is a digital badge is simply a representation of an activity or an achievement. It could be a micro-credential. It can be used to signal achievement of completion of a course, completion of a test. It could be completion of an activity like an apprenticeship. It could be a completion of some other type of achievement, like, say, if you've earned a patent, you could be awarded a digital badge. So I think a lot of people think of badges as credentials. Credentials is just one use case for badges, but badges can be used for a lot of different things. Micro-credentials is just simply one way, to do that. So when we think of digital credentials, a digital credential is something that you give to somebody, but you know what? It could be done through an Adobe PDF, right? It can be done through some other type of electronic means. A digital badge is a very good way to do that, though.
Mr. Leeser, you also mentioned to prevent retention, you offered incentives. May you please clarify what were these incentives?
Well, that's a very interesting thing because in Cognitive Class, we were looking for different types of incentives to provide to people. There are a lot of different things you can do, but one of the best ones is to provide recognition. And IBM has a group called the IBV, which is the Institute for Business Value. And the Institute for Business Value did several studies several years ago to find out what motivates people to do things. And one of the biggest ones is recognition for an achievement. It's a very big motivator. The digital badge alone, with nothing else, just the digital badge, no, financial incentive, nothing, no other type of reward. The digital badge alone is motivating the type of behavior we want at IBM. It's motivating people to advance their skills, to upskill and reskill, to do all these different types of things. And so we found that by simply providing people with this digital emblem, this digital badge, it provided that incentive. And I want to make another point about that, because when you earn a digital badge, it's yours. And that's a very big incentive. And when you think about in an organization, whether it's, like an institution like, IBM or another company, when you take training in a company like IBM, typically the training just sits inside a learning management system. And that's it. It's used for compliance or for an understanding of your qualifications. But the digital badge, if you add a digital badge to that, it's yours. It's portable. It's transferable. You get to take it with you the same way you would take a college diploma with you. So people now can create digital resumes. It doesn't sit inside a learning management system anymore. It's now part of the employee's personal brand. And I think that's a major incentive now that all this training that we did in all these different places now can create a digital resume that can go with us for life.
So, Mr. Leeser, I was wondering, can the learners stack different badges to get a full degree?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do that. One way is that, that the badge issuer, and that could be a company, it could be a college, it could be a learning institution, can develop a stackable credentials strategy. And I think that that's the best way to get started, is that you don't want to keep people on the first page of the book. You want them to read the whole book. And I think that most organizations create these programs without a thought of progression. So I think the progression is a very, very good strategy, what you just mentioned. So organizations really should start to think about how can they start to create progression for badges and how can they create stackable credentials. And there's a couple different ways to look at that. One of them is to have somebody learn from an elementary level to an advanced level. So for example, I might start out with, I'll use, big data as an example, a foundational level course. What is big data? And then I can get into the architecture of big data. And then I can get into developing big data solutions and get into the technology. So that it progresses people from how do I, what does big data actually mean to can I actually develop something in it? So that's one way to stack them. Another way to stack them is to create a unique degree or a unique set of credentials around a particular industry. So for example, I might say, okay, I want to learn about cloud architecture. And I get several badges. Maybe it's that stack we just talked about on cloud architecture. But then on top of that, why don't I stack on top of that something unique? Maybe it's in the energy sector. So I might say, I not only know about cloud architecture, but I also understand about the energy sector as well. So now I'm uniquely qualified to get a position or to provide value in the oil business. And I also know cloud architecture, but I also understand the oil business, or I understand the energy sector, or hospitality, or medicine. It could be healthcare, all these other things. So I think it's a really great idea for organizations to think in terms of what should we do to create unique stacked credential programs, and then also to collaborate with other organizations. So we might collaborate with the Project Management Institute and add project management badges for the cloud architect. So a person could be a cloud architect, but they also have a project management background as well.
So what are the top 3 reasons you see in the workplace learning should move towards online learning for upskilling and reskilling? And what is the role of digital badges?
Well, it's a very good question. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for it. And these reasons are starting to become more important. I think the first one is the technology changes. Technology is changing so quickly that the jobs of tomorrow will look very different than the jobs of today. And the skills we need for tomorrow will look very different than the skills we need for today. I think a lot of people are afraid of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and they really shouldn't be afraid of it in my position, because the skills are becoming more human. And I think that is going to open up opportunities for people to do things that are much more creative and inspired rather than kind of the rote mechanical things that we have had to do in the past. So I think that technology changes is one of the most important ones. We have to be prepared for all these massive changes in technology. Another one is retention. If we want to retain the next generation, we have to start to provide skilling in organizations, and we have to find a better way through our higher education institutions to provide upskilling and reskilling. You think about it, when you graduate from college or university, it's very much like buying a car. As soon as you drive that car off the dealer's parking lot, it becomes an older car. And the same thing is true of our college degree. A lot of the skills that we learn in college today may not be relevant 2 or 3 years from now. So if you think about it, if you go and you get a marketing degree, and let's say you got a marketing degree 5 years ago, did you get skills on social media analytics? Did you get skills on sentiment? how to build artificial intelligence into your solutions. You didn't learn those things. And I think that now we have an opportunity in higher education and in industry to provide this incremental skilling that goes on constantly. And that way we can keep people always up to date and always ready. And I think that that's the third point, is that organizations need to start to think about readiness and future readiness. And I think learning and development organizations have traditionally been focused on training. How do we get people skilled? How do we get people trained? And I think that they need to change the conversation from training to readiness or future proofing for the person and for the organization. And once they do that, they open up opportunities for their organizations, the learning and development, organizations, to do things that are much more important than they're doing now. They can start to provide data to the CEO in an organization to say, we can create a map of all the different skills we have in an organization and how close we are to achieving our goals. Now, here's an example with badges. So if you think about it, if we're able to take inventory of a person's skills at that micro level, so rather than a college degree, which says, hey, I have a diploma from a very nice school and it's in English or it's in science or it's in, humanities or whatever it happens to be. But what if we have it down at the micro level, at the digital badge level with all of those skills tags? We go, well, you got this degree in humanities, but what we didn't know was that you're very good at debating, that you have creativity skills, you have a growth mindset, you understand how to create innovation, you know how to do all these other things. Now, if we have an inventory of a person's skills at that level, think about what we can do to move people from one job to the next. And I'm thinking about marketing, for example. So in a marketing role, a person who is in a marketing role that may have skills on social media analytics, that person might be able to jump over to another highly technical skill because they may already have 4 of the 8 skills that are needed for this future job. Now, how will we know that if we don't take inventory of those skills? Instead, what we do is we say, okay, we have this new job that requires these 8 skills. Well, let's put them through the training for all these 8 skills, or let's hire somebody that has all those 8 skills. Now, if we knew that we have a candidate that's already working here that has 4 of those skills, and we have inventory of that, we've taken the skills registry. All we have to do is get them the 4 skills they need. Think of how cost effective that is, how much time that saves to say, just get them those 4 skills. We can move them into a better job. And so badges provide a way for us to create this collected skills registry that we could never have done before. We've tried to do this with learning management systems. We've tried to do this with all these spreadsheets and all this other stuff that happens. But now we can do it in a very different way. And also another point I just want to add to this is we can do it beyond the school and beyond the institution. So if you earn digital badges for going to a conference, or you earn digital badges because you went to a training class on your own, or you earned some sort of achievement from some other organization and you earned a badge for it, all of those badges can flow back into your skills registry. And now the organization has a deep understanding and saying, hey, you know what? In the past, we only knew about the training you took in our organization. Now we know about all these other skills that you have. So we have a very rich view of a person's skills with digital badges.
So based on what you were saying, how can we identify the quality of the badges?
That's a very good question. And I think a lot of people have that same question. And there is a proliferation of badges in the market right now. The number of badges that are being issued now is expanding exponentially. And so the question is, how do you determine a good badge from a bad badge? And I think there are a couple different ways. The first one is, and the biggest one is transparency. So we have to have complete transparency about what it took to earn that badge. I think every badge needs to have a public facing web page that displays what the person did to earn that badge. And it has to be very clear on the description of it, the skills that were earned, if there was anybody who endorsed that badge, if there was an assessment that was associated with it, what did it take to pass that assessment? Is there a syllabus included with that in that information. So the transparency is extremely important. We have to be very transparent. So if somebody earns a badge on, let's say, basic data science, we can't have a badge that says that this person has a degree in data science. And, but if we have that landing page with all of that transparency, we now can see exactly what it took to earn that badge. That's number one. Number two is the badges have to have complete information in them. They have to have all of the metadata that's necessary for somebody to make a decision on that. And a lot of people who are issuing badges right now, frankly, are not including the right information. So the completeness of that data is extremely important going forward. It has to have all that information I just described, all of the meta tags, the skills tags, the syllabus if it's possible. And then also a deep description of what it took to earn that badge, what the kind of exam, what the test rate was, and if there's any other type of evidence that could be attached to that. So for example, a person might be in graphic design. Is there a link to a portfolio or the course itself that shows what that person took for that? The next part is there's a growing movement to provide endorsement and also a way to collaborate with organizations that can provide the level of trust you need. So the first one is endorsement. There's a place in the badges to provide endorsement. So if somebody issues a badge, let's say an organization like IBM issues the badge, well, a higher education institution could endorse that badge. They could say, yes, we endorse this badge. We think this is a worthwhile badge. So I think the idea of endorsement is going to help people trust it. If it was endorsed by, let's say, Harvard University, people might trust it more than if it had not been. And then there's one last thing. There are now credentialing institutions. In the United States, there's one called ACE. And ACE provides colleges with a level of trust for credentials. And how they do it is they look at the credential. They, interview the people who have issued these credentials. And then they determine if the credential is worth credit for college. And so they can determine if it's worth a certain number of college credits, for example. They can put their stamp of endorsement on that. And then a university can look at that badge and look at the ACE endorsement and say, well, ACE says that's worth 3 college credits. So we'll issue 3 college credits for that. So it's a third party that is going in and looking at it and providing a level of endorsement and trust.
We would like to end this episode with a success story based on your experience with digital badges.
Well, you know what? There have been a lot of success stories with digital badges from an IBM perspective. I think the big broad story is that digital badges now have matured to a level that they can become an alternative for a college degree, or they can provide an amplification for a college degree. And I think that that's a tremendous benefit for people around the globe who may not have been able to afford going to a college, or they just need to get into a job. And maybe once they get into a job, they can go back to college. So the fact that these digital badges now have become a proxy for these other credentials, I think is tremendous for people around the globe. And in fact, at the IBM company and many other companies as well, more than 50% of the jobs do not require a college degree. But what they do require is skills. And digital badges now are providing a digital representation of those skills. And I think that's the biggest endorsement or the biggest success story for badges. From a personal level, that we have lots of different stories at IBM of people who have come from different circumstances and they haven't been able to get jobs. And there's one story of a woman who was in the IT world and she had to leave to raise her family. She wanted to have a traditional family, raise her children, and she could not afford to go back to college. And nor could she afford to really leave her home. She has children to raise. And so she was trying to get a job and she could not get a job. Nobody would hire her. She went to that CognitiveClass.ai website I mentioned. She earned the first badge. and it was for free. And she thought, I think I'll try and get a second badge. And she got the second badge. That was a lot harder. And then she got a third badge, which was harder. And then she got a fourth badge, which gave her a very good education, an up-to-date education on big data. So now she felt like she had relevant skills in the market that she could use to go get a job. She started applying for jobs. She used her digital resume because the badges create a digital resume automatically. They create a digital resume. She started sharing her digital resume with employers. Within a matter of weeks, she received a job offer that she could work from home and earn a good living and provide, income for her family. I asked her if it was the training that she received from those digital badges that helped her get the job. And she told me no. It was the confidence that she got from earning those digital badges. Those achievements that she was able to earn and keep, these digital badges gave her the confidence that she needed to go back in to the job market and look for a job. And she felt like she wasn't asking for a job at this point. She was exchanging her talents and skills for a paycheck. And I think that that's where digital badges is going to really change the way we work and provide opportunities for people in ways that we never could have imagined in the past.
Knowledge always gives confidence. Thank you, Mr. Leader, and thanks for sharing with us your rich experience.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the National E-Learning Center podcast with your host, El Hanouf. We hope you enjoyed our episode about digital credentials and workplace learning. As always, you can visit our website, nelc.gov.sa, to know more about our news. And don't forget to check our resources page. That's it for now. See you next time.